Are the Devils finished making moves? That's the question that's on everybody's mind. Tom Fitzgerald recently held a press conference and addressed that question. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play announcer, Devils Writer Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. I hope you're enjoying the free agent frenzy happening not just in hockey, but basketball as well. It's definitely been a whirlwind. I know it's basically like your guys' Christmas during the off-season, but for journalists, content creators, it's a lot of work behind the scenes. The past couple of days, I've been attending all sorts of media availabilities, gathering up all sorts of information, and trying to line up some good questions to ask. But you know what? I'm not going to complain about that because I'm sure you guys don't want to hear about that. Like I said, I've been attending a lot of media availabilities, and I decided on today's episode, we're going to focus on Tom Fitzgerald and his recent press conference with the media. I figured we haven't heard from Fitzy in a while, and a lot of people have strong opinions when it comes to Fitzgerald and the front office and the direction that the Devils are heading. I talked about it in the prior episode. Devils have built a solid team, won't light the world on fire, but heading in the right direction. In the first couple of segments, I will play some clips from Fitzgerald's press conference and I will share my thoughts on the matter. And then to close out today's episode, I will share my thoughts on the Devils extending Cody Glass. I thought he was pretty solid in the few games he appeared in for the Devils. I was open to bringing him back. Now, on to business. The big question that everybody has. Are the Devils finished? Or does Tom Fitzgerald have another trick up his sleeve? He spoke about it during his press conference. Here's what he had to share.
How would you assess where you are right now and what you have and what you think you'll open camp with? In other words, are things still bubbling? Do you expect much more?
Again, my number one priority is Luke Hughes. And, what I do with Luke Hughes will determine, what else I possibly could do.
A couple times during the press conference, Fitzy said that his main priority was to extend Luke Hughes, and that definitely sparked a buzz on social media. I'll circle back to that momentarily, but like I said, the Devils made some solid signings throughout the past few days. They signed Evgeny Dadonov to a one-year contract. Dadonov, yes, he might be up there in age, but he did put up 20 goals last season with the Stars. He will add some depth scoring. He doesn't need to be the star player, just gives the Devils another option. Connor Brown signed a 4-year contract worth $12 million, $3 million average annual value. I like Connor Brown and what he could potentially bring to the Devils. I think he has good speed. He's a solid two-way player, but I don't like that he has a full-blown no-trade clause the first 2 seasons and then a modified no-trade clause the final 2 seasons. I think Fitzy is putting himself into a similar position that he did with Eric Holla, which is hypothetically, if it doesn't work out, you're kind of stuck because he has trade protection, but that's worst case scenario. Cody Glass, his new deal is 2 years, $2.5 million average annual value, $5 million total. I felt as though the Devils could have gotten him a lot cheaper. I was open to the fact that he was going to hit the open market. I didn't think he was going to spark that much interest in the free agency pool. I thought the Devils would try to sign him for at least $1 million and call it a day right there. But you know what? I'll live with that. At the end of the day, the Devils have about $6.09 million in cap space. Luke Hughes still needs a new contract. Now, let's circle back to what Tom Fitzgerald said. Is he done making moves? I don't think so, and it does involve Luke Hughes, but there's more to it. Luke's contract is going to be an interesting one. People have been saying like it could be anywhere from $7.5 million to $9 million average annual value. We don't really know, but I think both sides are close to an agreement. That's just pure speculation on my end. But if the Devils were trying to work out a deal for Luke right now, his average annual value based on the cap that the Devils have would be under $7 million. And there's just no way Luke is going to take that sort of discount. Just not going to happen. I don't see him signing anywhere under $7 million annually, meaning the Devils still have to make a move in order for that to work. So who's going to be gone? Is it going to be Andre Palat, Dawson Mercer, or Dougie Hamilton? I've talked about it ad nauseum on this show. I think Andre Palat, he's the one that you have to key in on, because if you just dump his contract, it won't really come back to bite you in the grand scheme of things. He's a decent player. He's a good forechecker. Obviously, he has championship pedigree, but if you were to lose someone like Dougie Hamilton and just use that money to extend Luke Hughes, that's not very proactive of you, because you just lost a big contributor when it comes to producing offense on your back end, and you're putting more pressure on Luke Hughes, because Jonas Siegenthaler, not going to produce offense. Brett Pesce, not going to produce offense. Brendan Dillon, not going to produce offense. Jonathan Kovacevic won't be ready to go at the beginning of the season. Seamus Casey, he can produce offense. We've seen it a couple of times throughout the course of the season, but he still has a lot of work to do. Shimo Nemitz has even said that his main priority is to not score. It's to be a good defensive anchor. He's working on his two-way game. I think he's developing correctly, but still, that would be a lot of pressure to put on the shoulders of Nemitz, Casey, and Hughes. Losing Dougie, you need to have something else in the works, because you're going to have a big gaping hole that would need to be filled if you just decide to move on from Dougie. I think Dougie is safe. The one neutral option you could have is Dawson Mercer, because he's paid annually $4 million and he has no clauses attached to his deal. But Fitzy spoke highly of Mercer during his press conference. He said that Mercer didn't really have a bad year. Yeah, he didn't produce 27 goals like he did a few seasons ago, but make no mistake, Mercer was still a solid contributor, plays the full sheet of ice. He has improved. He just needs to work on consistency. And of all the bottom six players, Mercer was the better performing player. So I don't think the Devils are just going to let go of Mercer, similar to Dougie Hamilton, unless you have something else in the works. I think your only option is to get rid of Andre Palat. And if Fitzy is able to do that and do something similar to the Rangers, which is unload a big contract, free up some money, I think a lot of people will shift their tune when it comes to Fitzgerald. We're just going to have to wait and see. I don't think the Devils are done making moves. Luke Hughes needs a new deal. He's not going to be paid annually under $7 million. He knows he's worth a lot more, and I think the front office is aware that he is worth a lot more. I think Andre Palat, he should be counting down the days until he finds a new team. I think Tom Fitzgerald and company are working on that. I think the Devils still have a few more moves left in them. Reports are saying that the Devils are interested in Ehlers, so that's something to keep an ear out for. I'll probably talk about it in a future episode, but for the time being, I don't think the Devils are done making moves. They still need to do a few more things before we call it an offseason and just say, okay, they did the best they could. They improved the roster. This is who they're going to rock with going into the 2025-2026 season. Okay, we will hear from Fitzgerald again in a little bit, but before we continue, let me tell you guys about Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So, in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. What was one surprising thing that I noticed when I started tracking my spending with Monarch? Just how much I was spending on takeout. With Monarch Money, I was able to cut back on that a little bit. Not only am I eating healthier, but I am saving money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Okay, Fitzy spoke about the signings he made the past few days. He also talked about the current state of the team. Here's what he had to share. Take a listen.
Connor Brown, Dadonov, obviously two guys that can really help bolster some of the depth there.
Yeah, we just wanted to add to the middle of our lineup where try to add some depth scoring ability. Connor Brown's a guy who can move around your lineup. He gives you speed, a fantastic penalty killer. He's a guy that Sheldon will use at the end of games as well, kind of like a Swiss jackknife. So really excited about him. And again, I'm sure he had offers to go somewhere else, and it's nice when you get kind of handpicked and you can start a conversation and you sense the excitement of a player, not even knowing about New Jersey or other than knowing our team, other than we have a good team that wanted to be here. So that was great. The Dadonov, same thing. Like when we were kind of trying to fit pieces into the puzzle, it just made so much sense on a performance-based contract where he could fit in and earn some more money. So, again, another guy that gives us flexibility, versatility throughout the lineup.
What's your initial impression now, Tom, of the team when you look at the additions that you made yesterday and who you might have coming up, Ritzik and those players?
Yeah. Well, we're excited. We're excited. I think we're a faster team. I think we've added the skill and the excitement of, watching Gritsuk or Lenny or even a Shane LaChance come into camp and show us, make it hard on us to send them down. They're all different. They all have NHL upside. Gritsuk will be the one that we're really excited to see when he comes over here. How can he adapt? He'll be here mid-August to adapt. They tell me he's got upside over Dadonov at the same age, and it'd be nice for Dadonov to mentor him.
When will Lenny come over?
Same, yeah. They didn't come over obviously because of their schedules and ending so late. Lenny, in particular, with the World Championships, it didn't make sense for him to fly over, take away from his training, because really that's the most important thing right now for players like that.
At the end of season conference, Tom, you had mentioned something about depth scoring, and you were asking yourself, like, what is depth scoring? You talk to your analytics people. So kind of what did you learn from that point to now, and looking at the additions that you made yesterday?
Well, I think the one thing that we were looking for is 5-on-5 play. And you look at the goals totals of Brown and Dadonov, and majority of their goals are 5-on-5. Not sure we found the answer to the question. Is it shooting percentage in the playoffs? Is it getting on a hot streak? Is it the amount of chances you get? Eventually, goals will fall in. We just felt like we definitely added to what we felt we needed to add to in that depth. So again, you want players. Years are going to go up and down. You just hope you can get players to level out and be consistent with their play from October to the end of the season.
Fitzy brought up some interesting names. Lenny Haminaho, Arseny Gritsyuk, Shane LaChance. He played at Boston University under Jay Pandolfo. Remember, the Devils got him at around the trade deadline. I'm excited to see how those guys develop in addition to Mike Yegorov. Obviously, Yegorov is going to spend another year at Boston University. I think it's the best place for him for right now, but he is right. The Devils do have some up-and-coming players to definitely keep an ear out for. I know Joseph Stanislaw, a.k.a. Jersey Joe, my colleague at Pucks and Pitchforks, he is rather high on a lot of these prospects that the Devils have, particularly Gritsyuk. He's been talking about Gritsyuk the past few seasons, so I definitely think the Devils have something special with these guys, but you can't rely on them to help you get out of the mud. But for Gritsyuk, I have high hopes for him as well. We're just going to have to wait and see how he develops. And with another Russian player now added to the roster, we'll see how Dodonov is able to mentor Gritsyuk and try to elevate his game. Fitzy talked about depth scoring once again. What is depth scoring, and did the Devils accomplish that? Well, I would say yes. When you add someone like Brown, when you add someone like Dodonov, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I've said that before. So I think the big thing that the Devils have been missing, especially from last year, is that they still haven't replaced the productivity of Tyler Toffoli. So when people talk about depth scoring, I always go back to the example of Tyler Toffoli. Yes, he was leading the Devils in goals when he was traded to Winnipeg. I am well aware. But one thing you cannot deny was that Toffoli really put the offense over the edge for the Devils, because not only did you have Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Timo Meier, Dougie Hamilton when he was healthy, but you had Tyler Toffoli in your back pocket as well. And I think it's safe to say Toffoli surprised a lot of people. Unfortunately, I think people forgot about Toffoli and what he was able to do during the 2023-2024 season. It was a forgettable year because Devils missed the playoffs. They fired Lindy Ruff that season. But remember, Toffoli was really good while in a Devil sweater, even though it was short-lived. But I think Fitzy and company, they're heading in the right direction. They have the right idea. I shared this stat in yesterday's episode, but I will share it again. Dodonov and Brown had 17 combined 5-on-5 goals after January 1st. The Devils got a combined total of 10 5-on-5 goals from 6 lineup regulars after that date, most of who won't be returning. Immediate improvement. Okay. I think Dodonov and Brown, like I said, they're not going to set the world on fire, but I definitely think they are improvements compared to last year, similar to what Daniel said. Another thing that Fitzy mentioned is that with the addition of Brown, they're definitely a faster team, which I also found quite interesting because when Sheldon Keefe took over as head coach for the Devils, the team was less run and gun and focused more on defense, which I liked, but the offense was sometimes too lethargic for my liking. So I think adding Brown, it definitely puts an extra pep in your step. I think as presently constructed, the Devils are definitely a playoff team. I don't think they really have that much to worry about in the Metro. I still believe they're a top 3 Metro team if they were to roll out with the roster that they have now. Are they contenders? Probably not, but if all goes well for them, if they stay healthy, you never know. But it seems like we've been saying that same sentence the past few seasons. And when can it get to a point where injuries are no longer an excuse for the Devils? Like, it's no longer an issue. We don't really know. But I like what Fitzy is doing. I think he should be proud of himself. I think he's getting the team in the right direction. I also want to add, bringing back Jake Allen was also a good move, and signing him to that team-friendly deal. The Devils have a good goaltending tandem for at least the next season because Markstrom's contract will expire at the conclusion of the 2025-2026 season. All in all, nothing but positive takeaways from Fitzgerald's recent press conference. Okay, let's talk about Cody Glass and him returning to the Devils. The Devils announced that the team agreed to terms with center Cody Glass on a 2-year contract worth $5 million, annual average value of $2.5 million. Remember, it was initially reported by Elliot Friedman that the Devils were not going to extend a qualifying offer to Glass and just let him hit the open market, presumably so that way they could sign him to a cheaper deal, like average annual value of $1 million or something like that. Because I think it's safe to say that while Cody Glass is solid, he hasn't really lived up to the $2.5 million that he was initially making, but Fitzgerald thought otherwise, and here we go. Cody Glass is now with the Devils for the next 2 seasons. Had the chance to speak with him at a recent press conference. Here's what he had to say to me and the rest of the media when it came to returning to the Devils.
So just initial thoughts on coming back to New Jersey.
Yeah, I'm fired up. I'm super excited. I wanted to stay the whole time, so I'm glad that a deal could get done, and yeah, I'm back for 2 years.
I'm glad that Cody Glass, Jake Allen, they feel right at home in New Jersey. And it's a side of Tom Fitzgerald that I don't think a lot of people are giving him enough credit for, which is he's creating a really good environment that people want to come to. People want to stay here because so many times you just hear players wanting to get out of a certain situation first chance they get. But that's not the case here in New Jersey. And remember, Eric Holla was emotional a couple seasons ago when he said that he wanted to work out an extension with the Devils. He said that these guys were like his family. And remember, Holla's a veteran player. He's played on so many playoff caliber teams. But the fact that he said, I don't want to go anywhere, I want to remain in New Jersey, that says something. And kudos to Tom Fitzgerald and the entire organization for making a really happy culture here in New Jersey. I know a lot of people say the Devils are soft or this and that, but in the locker room, you never really hear of any drama or in-house fighting or chemistry issues, because I remember talking to Catherine Bogart about it when she was still with the Devils. She said that everyone loves each other in the locker room. And I think this is a perfect segue into another talking point that I want to bring up when it comes to Cody Glass. I read online that Cody Glass was in a dark spot at one point in his career. And something I always talk about is that athletes are humans at the end of the day. Cody Glass talked about depression, anxiety, and just being in not a good spot because he was dealing with injury, and I don't think his career was panning out the way he wanted to. I had the chance to ask him about it during his press conference. Here's what he had to tell me. Cody, first and foremost, welcome back. I read somewhere online saying how you're an advocate for mental health awareness. You talked about your journey over the past few years. How have you grown both as a player and a person, because so much has happened the last few seasons?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always tough. I haven't mastered it yet, but I do talk to a lot of people to kind of, help me along the way. Especially with, it's kind of tough with, the personal life and putting the hockey life kind of aside when you're at home, because, those two things kind of mesh. So I think I've done a lot better job with that. But I have to give credit to my wife. She's kind of been in my corner, my family, all that kind of stuff. But, it's always something you have to work on. And I consistently do it. I work with a ton of people, and yeah, it's been a tough life. And, we're hockey players, obviously, but, there's stuff that happens, away from the rink that you have to kind of handle too. So, but yeah, it's always just a work in progress.
Awesome. Final question. I know you didn't play in that many games with the Devils this past season. Have you set some goals for yourself for this upcoming year?
Uh, Not yet. It's nice to know where I'm going now. Obviously, back to New Jersey. So, But yeah, I think I'll talk to my sports psychologist and kind of go over some, values and some goals for this upcoming season. And yeah, I think I'm looking forward to that. So it's great just knowing where I'm going and being back. It's a very exciting feeling. And obviously, I'm getting a bunch of texts, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm going to enjoy it for right now, but obviously back to work tomorrow.
I have no doubt that Cody Glass will be a solid contributor for the Devils, and I'm glad that despite only appearing in less than 20 games with the Devils, he felt enticed to return, and he said that the Devils was always the top option, similar to Jake Allen. So when you're bashing on Tom Fitzgerald, just remember, you never really hear of any chemistry issues within the locker room, because I think the Devils have built a really good culture behind closed doors, and I think a lot of people are happy to be a part of it. And I'm glad that Cody Glass and Jake Allen are the prime examples. So let me know your thoughts. What did you think of Tom Fitzgerald's press conference? And are you happy that Cody Glass is returning to the Devils? And what are your expectations for him? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on podcast streaming service. Hit me up on my personal X page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.